Hello and welcome to another episode of Rando Rob. My name is Rob, and on Rando Rob, I already established who I am. You know who I am. Pick random items from around my room, various pieces of my collection, and I share them with you on this show. If you want to listen to this podcast, you could go over to podcast.robohara.com. You can go to Apple Podcasts and search for a show called Rando Rob, 2 words, or you can go to YouTube and you can not only listen but watch these episodes as well and see the YouTube videos and see the items that I actually bring. Just go to youtube.com/Rob O'Hara. There's actually even a little playlist that has all the Rando Robs all grouped together, and you can go through. This is number, I believe, 102. So there's a lot of rando items that we have talked about on Rando Rob. Now, this week I have brought 2 items. These are items that I came into possession, 5 years ago, let's say, give or take. I had a friend who was a local arcade cabinet dealer, and he bought and sold and restored and fixed arcade machines. And I bought several of the machines that I owned from him, and I sold some of the machines when I got rid of mine to him. So I did lots of buying and selling with this guy. But he also opened a local retro-themed arcade. When I mean local, right here in Oklahoma. And I went to it several times. It moved locations. I went to the new location several times. I just thought, what a neat thing to support. What a neat... anybody that has that dream of opening a retro arcade, I just think it's such a neat thing. And I've said this before on other podcasts, other shows, but I will say this again. If you are a fan of retro arcade games and there is a retro arcade anywhere near you, you should go there and you should spend some money. I find it easy to fall in love with these places. And I love the idea of retro arcade being around and retro arcade machines. And I tell people about them and I enjoy that they exist. But then I don't go there very often, and these places can only stay open if we go there and spend our money, buy a Coke or some popcorn or whatever they happen to have, buy a snack. Spend some money at their gift shop or something, and definitely, if it's an admission to go in, I have a friend that runs the Arcadia Retrocade in Arkansas, and every time I go, he tries to let me in for free, and every time I go, I insist on paying the admission fee because I want that place to stay open. So anyway, my little soapbox. But if you have a retro arcade anywhere near you and you like there being retro arcades, then definitely go support those places. So anyway, me and this guy had another mutual friend named Drew, who I have mentioned before. Drew is a young man that lives nearby me as well. He's into a lot of the same things that I'm into. He's into arcade stuff. He's into old, vintage computers. He does lots of neat things. And apparently he had access, or had, I'm not really sure the backstory of these, to a metal CNC cutting machine. And so he had cut out some decorations to hang in my other friend's arcade. And he had cut some extra ones and offered them to me. And so that is where I got these 2 items. I'm going to show you the back of what it looked like first, the back. So these are metal cut out Space Invaders. And you can see one side was almost like a silver kind of color, but they are definitely metal. And then the other side was a darker color metal. But what I did was use spray paint, and I spray painted them bright colors, reminiscent of the original colors. These were just spray paint colors that I had on hand. But as you can see, so this is one of the enemies from Space Invaders. It is, if you're not watching the video, I would say it is probably 6 inches by 8 inches. I've also learned the hard way that the metal corners on this are extremely sharp and the edges are a little sharp. I haven't cut myself bad on these before, but they will definitely poke you. I don't know how thick this metal is. 1/8 inch, maybe. That seems about right. I definitely don't feel like I could bend this with my hand. If I knock on it next to the microphone, that's what it sounds like. In case you're wondering what that might sound like if I knocked on one of these. So this is one of the enemies from Space Invaders, and let me get the other one. And so one I painted this, a traditional yellow color, and then I had this like a aqua spray paint color, a very, very light turquoise. It is more aqua, I would say, kind of a very, very light bluish green kind of color. And it is not quite, originally I was going to paint them like the green that would appear on the CRT monitor, but I thought they looked a little bit more kind of cool 80s in these colors. So these two Space Invaders, and again, these are solid metal. I honestly don't think if I held them in my hand, I could bend them in half. I don't think I could bend them in any way. They're pretty solid. I have these, what I did out in my workshop, I have these hanging. I have a wall in my workshop. Only one of the 4 walls in my workshop has drywall, and the other 3 have spray-in foam insulation, which is very, very good at insulating the temperature of that building, but very inconvenient when it comes to hanging things or attaching things to a wall. So one of the 4 walls is drywalled, and that's the one that I have posters stuck to and a few things hanging on, and that's where these Space Invaders live. And so what I did was, out there in the building, I have here I'm posing for my thumbnail now, where I go, oh, and I look crazily through in between the 2 Space Invaders. But what I did was I just put 2 different screws in the wall, and then I didn't screw them in all the way to the wall, so there's a little bit of a lip left of the screw, and then I could just kind of hang these at different angles on those screws, so they kind of sit little cattywampus on the wall like that. So if you're not familiar with Space Invaders, that seems like a ridiculous sentence. Space Invaders was released in 1978 in arcades. I never can remember the actual company that made it. I could probably look that up here while I'm sitting here, but it says it was developed by Tomohiro Nishikado. But it was, as most of us know, it was built and then distributed in Japan by Taito and licensed to Midway for distribution in other countries, including the United States. So it's definitely one of those games now I think I more associate with Taito, but back then you would have seen it associated with Bally or Midway. It is, I'm looking at the Wikipedia article here. It says that it is considered to be one of the most influential video games of all time, and that it ushered in the golden age of arcade video games, which is definitely true. That would be 1978. I was 5 years old. I remember seeing Space Invaders, and then suddenly Asteroids, and then pretty soon, Donkey Kong, and then things just kind of took off, But lots of Space Invader stuff at that time. You would see, not a lot of merchandise, I don't think, but, I remember going into places and seeing multiple Space Invaders machines, which was kind of a weird thought now, It happened again with Pac-Man. You would go into places and they would have multiple Pac-Man arcade machines, but Space Invaders was like that. So my memories aren't as much of Space Invaders in 1978, moving into arcades and starting arcades. My memory is more from 1980 when Space Invaders was released for the Atari 2600. Space Invaders is considered to be what they call a killer app for the Atari 2600 or the Atari VCS. I have read that sales of the Atari VCS quadrupled when they released Space Invaders. So, as I have notoriously told and recalled, that my dad actually let me skip school, and I believe this might be the only time in my entire school career that he let me skip school, and he and I went to Toys R Us and bought Space Invaders the day it came out, or that week or whatever. And when we got home and plugged it in, it was bowling, and so we had to take it back and exchange it. And I've never fully understand how that happened. I mean, it was a brand new game and it was a brand new thing. So maybe someone else had already bought it and then switched out the chip or something and then returned it. Or the board, would that be possible? Or doesn't seem like it could get switched at the manufacturing plant, but maybe someone did the same thing. Maybe a dishonest employee swapped it out. I really don't know how it happened. But in retrospect, I would love to have kept that one. The Space Invaders that had bowling inside. It just seems to be a little bit more unique of an item to own. But we did take it back and go back and exchange that and get our own copy of Space Invaders. So played it in the arcade, played it on the Atari, played it on the Commodore, played it on the Apple. There was a million, rip-offs and clones of it on computers for years and years. And of course, that led us to, Space Invaders seemed amazing. And then all of a sudden there was Galaxian, which was like Space Invaders, but better. And then there was Galaga, which was like Galaxian, but better, and so on and so forth. And then now we have an entire genre of vertical shooters, but this is kind of what it all traces back to. So I don't have a lot of arcade items on display. I have a stack of arcade marquees, and I may show off some of those at some point in time, but I've never had a good way to display them. So they're just sitting in a stack out in the workshop right now, which is no good because you can't really enjoy them like that. But these Space Invaders, if you're looking at them again on the video, I see every day. Every day when I go out to the workshop, these guys are hanging up, and in fact, they're right below the clock that I have in my workshop. So every time I look to see what time it is, I can say, hey, it's Space Invaders time. Because I see these guys floating on the wall, reminding us that if aliens do ever come to the Earth, it probably won't be good news for us. So anyway, I've got some back episodes of Rando Rob that I need to edit and get uploaded as well. So you should see some other episodes showing up on YouTube and in the podcast stream as well. I just released an episode of You Don't Know Flack a couple of days ago. On that episode, I talked about eCoder Ring, which is a program I wrote a long time ago to send and receive encrypted messages that started off as a kind of a fun toy and a programming experiment. And actually, I ended up creating something that sends essentially unbreakable encryption messages or encrypted messages. So if you want to hear about the evolution of that program and how it came about, go check out the latest episode of You Don't Know Flack. I will have a new episode of Sprite Castle probably next week. And don't forget, if you're watching or listening to this, that I stream on Twitch on Wednesday nights at 7 o'clock Central Time. And that is at twitch.tv/Rob O'Hara. So thanks, as always, for showing up to another episode of Rando Rob. Enjoy your Space Invaders and having your space invaded by me. And I will be talking to you all soon. Thanks, everyone.